So right now I want to talk about getting back into feeling instead of relying on somebody else to give you the news. Because if somebody else constantly giving you news about what's happening in the world, you're no longer relying on your internal senses. What does that mean? You give no more power. You have no more internal power because you've given your internal power to the news or CNN or whatever. Or it don't even have to be that. I don't watch the news, but a lot of people look at something. And it's getting out of, some people say, well, I just want to know what's happening, though. But what's happening, though? Because here's what I want to talk about, Back to the Future. I believe the future was actually the early 1900s. I believe the future was actually the 1800s. I believe that was the actual future right there. So Back to the Future is back to those times. And what were people doing? Let's think about, let's think about tribes and stuff. Let's think about tribes and how they went by what they were feeling. And some of them probably relied on their ancestors too, but still they were going by what they were feeling. They were going by their senses. Their senses were more heightened. Their senses were heightened like the wildlife, like the animals. People's senses have been dumbed down. See, people feel like they're more advanced right now because of technology. What happened is technology is more advanced and people have de-evolved from being even a human being. People are robots and do not know they are robots. They have become completely egos. Meaning they only go by And this is not a judgment. It's just that I'm just saying what's going on. Most of the time only go by the five senses. And it's because a lot of people do have intuition, but you have too many other folks that you can't even really express that to. Because people are so into, I guess, the left brain. They're not really into feeling. They're more into just getting their information from other sources. More of the research, nothing wrong with research, but they've gotten out of feeling. So when you tell somebody something's happening, you feel it, like, where did you see that? Where did you hear that? I've said so many times, like, say about my family. I don't call them my family anymore because I have my own beliefs about that. I could say they did something. Well, how do you know? And I could say I saw them. I saw what they were doing. People don't know that you can actually see them. See, people need you to have proof. People need to either have you, because somebody comes to you, you need to have some proof of actually standing there and watching them do it. You cannot just say that you actually can see with the mind's eye, or even something other than the mind's eye, because that mind's eye is really what I believe people call the third eye. The third eye is that mind's eye. And if you use that eye, other people can see what you're seeing. These controllers can see what you're seeing with that mind's eye. Okay? So the other eye needs to be given more power. Why was that eye dumbed down? Who told you about the third eye? Where did the third eye come from? Was there really an astral world in the 1800s? Where did the third eye come from? Where did the chakras come from? People were doing well without even really concentrating on the chakras for a long time, and they were more advanced. People were more advanced, they relied on their own senses, and they weren't talking about chakras. Where did that stuff come from? It's almost like I said this before, we've been genetically modified by all this stuff that's being fed and fed and fed and fed. I don't care about any of these conscious channels that want to talk about all this energy, all this stuff. I don't want to deal with chakras. I don't want chakras. I just don't want chakras no more. Where did all this come from? Cause let me tell you something. Those other tribes from from thousands of years ago, they not using. I'm telling you, they're using a different eye. They're using a real eye. They're not using a third eye. They're using a real eye. Their world is not holographic. Their world is not holographic. We have people in general. Most people have de-evolved. I would say the early 1900s is probably where you best get on a path to being back to who you are supposed to be advancing as what you call a human being, because a human being is still a low level. That's a very low. And people have de-evolved below that. That's when people just need to be cut off. But see, really, the people that you see and that you see on TV and all this, and just in your around you, they're not the only thing that exists. It's all about your perception of reality. So when I say get rid of humanity, I'm talking about the humanity like as we see it. And literally put yourself in energetically in another reality. And cut off this the way it is. And, it's going to take work, depending on where you are. But yeah, people have de-evolved. I said this before. Even my father, who was a boomer, he used to use atlases when he used to drive different places. He used the atlas. Now people use GPSs. You can't even hardly find no atlas nowhere. You can't even find no atlas. And you know the other thing? Why did the map change from the 1900s? Is the map still the same? Is the globe still the same? But you know what? When I see a globe, and I'm not talking about with my fake eyes. When I see a globe, I'm seeing an old-fashioned globe. Look like it's from like the early, maybe 1950s or something like that. Like I'm seeing a globe from that time when I see a globe. So telling me the globe that people think they seeing now is it's not real. See, let me tell you why people have de-evolved. Too many lies. Too many lies. It seems like in the early 1900s, I don't know what people really went through in the early 1900s, because history is a fucking lie. History is a lie. Okay? So what really happened in 1900s? What was the real truth? What really happened in the 1800s? What was the real truth, huh? Because you know how these certain people always like to keep things around. They like to keep things. And the fact that you don't see many slave ships let you know that with the story that you've been told might not have really been true. Might not have really been true. I think people during that time were at a higher level of consciousness. Why? Because they knew who they were. You're not at a high level of consciousness not knowing who you are. You're at your highest level of consciousness, speaking your own language and knowing who you were and knowing where you came from. That's when you were at your highest. Now they did all this work to make sure people just don't know who they are, that they stay lost. That humans have literally de-evolved into something that's just not even human. And humans are literally becoming machines now. Don't even know they're becoming robots. They don't realize that. You know. I just felt like talking about that for a little bit. Yeah. I was talking to a guy, and just a neighbor, and he was talking about Biden, how he just so sick of Biden and the Biden administration, and how he just want Trump back in office and all that stuff right there. And he was talking about the people have the power with their vote. I said, but didn't Trump get didn't Trump get cheated? Wasn't he supposed to win though? He said it was rigged, right? So that means the vote is not the power then. The vote is not the power, because if the vote had been the power, then Trump would have been in office had the vote been the power. So vote is not the power. They're playing games. And I don't know what he was saying to me before we just finished talking about, well, the government have this, you can sign this, and you can sign this if you want certain things. Like, you know what? They want to see you sweat. They ain't going to change. They going to do exactly what the hell they want to do. The only thing they want to do is see you sweat. They already knew Biden was going to have his butt up in office no matter who was supposed to win on paper. They already knew that Biden was going to have his butt in office because there's bigger powers going on that wanted to make sure that Biden was in office because Biden was more controllable. But let me be completely frank. Biden is no longer the original person when Obama was in office. When I said this to this guy, you got to be careful what you say to people. I try not to just say too much. You know, this is why I just can't be around people too long, because I want to stay on what I want to stay on, right? Wherever you want to be, you stay on that, and you just can't be around other people too long. Nothing wrong with them, but you can't be on that path right there, right? But he said, but Obama did things. So I said, no. I said, that's not what I mean. I'm not praising Obama. That's not what I mean. I said, Biden is no longer that man anymore. He's gone. So maybe whatever thing took over Biden could not take over Trump that easily. Maybe Trump was a little bit too freaking headstrong. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm saying maybe Trump was a little too freaking headstrong for an entity to just freely take over like they were able to do Biden. Biden was a little bit more, something was happening with his mind anyway. Well, it's not his mind, but something was going on anyway. He was vulnerable anyway. He was easier to take over. Something else is in his body. Something else is using his avatar. Okay. So, and then he talked about the people. I said, talk about the whales dying. Let me tell you something. I haven't been paying attention to nothing. I have completely tuned out of that. I said, these people are going to end up dying. I said, be careful what you do with your attention. I said, just make sure. I told him like this. I try to keep it simple with certain people because I know he's deep into politics. I try to keep it as simple as possible. He's not in my world. My perception, he's not there. And so I try to keep it, you know. I said, look, just focus on the things that you want to see. Don't pay any more attention too much to these Democrats. And I know he said, well, I want to see what's going to happen. I want to see what's happening. And that's how I started this anyway. That's what the title was going to be. Getting more into feeling. Getting more into knowing. You cannot get into knowing looking at somebody else and say, well, I want to see what they're going to do next. Well, you're not going to ever get into knowing like that. You're never going to get into knowing like that constantly. Like, well, I want to see what's going to happen. Well, now you have more faith in them. You're having more faith in them. If you rely on what they feed you, that means you have more faith in them. Okay? So, I wondered what happened. If people in general, which, you know, we are in a particular perception of reality, what we are seeing a lot of times don't have to be the way it is. It's just all about us getting back into our internal power, feeling and knowing. And then things might change from there, and it's going to be a little process. It's going to be a process because people have fallen so low. A lot of us have fallen so low, don't realize how low we've fallen, but we've fallen so low. And that you think, oh, well, you know, people say, well, I just want to tell you what's going on in the world. Which world are you talking about? See, this is your only limited perception of reality, that you think a bunch of people killing each other and their murders and all that stuff. You think that's the only reality that exists. Just because that's what you are witnessing at the time doesn't mean that it's the only reality that exists when we're really dealing with frequencies here. So how is that the only reality that exists? I cannot tune in to and I cannot talk to people like that for too long that want to convince you that this is the only thing there is. You cannot, because it's already a process to work on yourself and get your own internal power back by releasing all of the indoctrination and bullshit that's been fed to us our whole entire life. Okay? And the last thing we need to do is be around people who really feel like you need to really pay attention to everything that's happening. You know, everything is a freaking illusion. So why would I treat anything, a particular thing, as real when everything's an illusion anyway? Okay? But that's all I want to say. So I was like telling him, like, just take your mind off of them. Don't take your mind off of Biden and them. Don't worry about them no more. I said, if you something that you want to see in the world, focus on the things that you want to see in the world. And eventually you focus on that long enough, that just might be where you end up. That just might be where you end up, because they get their power from people paying attention to them. They get their power from people. That's how they're creating their realities, through people. People pay attention to it. People accept everything that they are given as real. And because people accept it and take it seriously, then those type of realities get created. Those type of timelines get created. Same thing with slavery. Oh, they're going to take us back to slavery. Well, take you back where? Because were you really in slavery? They created those timelines by having people believe all that stuff. And now you might have people taking in that type of timeline because of the stuff that we've been indoctrinated with, and believe that it actually happened, that those timelines actually were created. That's why I don't watch slavery movies. Anyway, that's it. Just getting more back into feeling and knowing, instead of just having to always read something. Or there's nothing wrong with reading. Reading is good. Nothing wrong with reading. But I'm telling you something right now. Some of the most advanced civilizations really didn't do a lot of reading and writing. And I know that sounds weird to people in this kind of world, but the most advanced civilizations did not do a lot of reading and writing. And I see right now, in order to really move like I want to move, I do have to it's going to have to be a change of location. It's going to have to be a change of location. It is.